Hey, good evening there, the Silver Lining Gang. It's Andy here, your host, with the fabulous, wonderfully gifted Kylie Davis. How are you, Kylie?
I'm very well, Andy. How are you?
I'm great, thank you very much. I'm still trying to talk as if I'm in Australia time. So I confused the hell out of myself with Justin Nickerson earlier on. Really confused myself, like badly. Um, um, Look, for those of you that don't know, Silver Lining, it's about helping people to get through this corona cloud and to focus on the things that they can do that can help them to get through. And then beyond that, help them to actually improve their lives in what is going to be a permanently changed world. I've got Kylie Davis with us on today, and she's an absolute star in terms of media marketing, in particularly from a digital point of view, very much as a thought leader in that space within the real estate sector in particular. But she's obviously got the nous to be able to apply it to pretty much whatever she wants. And aside from anything else, she's been someone that has, even though she's faced some serious adversity, as a lot of Australians have over the course of this year so far, you can still see a big fat smile on her face, which is amazing. Yeah. So Kylie, how are you? How are you going? How's your world?
I mean, are you allowed to say that you're enjoying the pandemic? You're not, probably not allowed to, but for the last 18 months since I left CoreLogic, I've been working from home and loving managing my own time and managing my own space and all of that. But then also hitting this kind of wall constantly of people saying, "Oh, I've got to meet for a coffee," or "Do you want to, when are you next in town?" And for me, I'm believe it or not, I'm a little bit of an introvert, and I'm good at I like going out and I love talking to people and I like being in social situations, but I really need to come back and recharge and be away from people after protracted periods of socializing.
Yep.
And I use my writing to kind of reduce the noise and to do that sort of stuff. So I'm quite enjoying isolation because I don't have to explain to anyone that, no, I don't want to come in for coffee because I've been in town 3 days, I don't want to, and we should just do it on a Zoom call. I think that
and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the observation of the fact that introverts really are in their element to a degree, because they're not having to save face and make excuses and all that sort of stuff. Not doing what they don't want to do, and and it's a fascinating little dynamic there. How it's the extroverts that are really frying their circuits right now, trying to sort of get their fix, so to speak. And you guys, and I mean, look, I personally see myself as something of an introvert as well. I do feel that I'm a bit similar to yourself, and I like, quite, believe it or not, I do like being quiet and having other people talk around me, and not really, having that need to have myself my mouth active the whole time. So it's an interesting one. And look, you say you're enjoying it. I mean, look, to put some context into it, gang, for those of you that are watching, it's not. Yes, it's in context, right? So it's not a case that Kylie's enjoying seeing everyone being miserable by any stretch of the imagination. It's more of a case. It's her personal sort of thing.
No, and look, we all have terrible fears around this sort of stuff, and we've got all of those. But I think from my own personal experiences over the last couple of years, probably last 4 or 5 years since my dad got sick, and then with the bushfires and stuff like that, I have got very present to what terrifies me or what scares me and how to manage that fear. So as long as and the way I do that is by worrying about what I can actually change and what I can do. And, and I'm a bit of a workaholic and I quite enjoy working through things. So I just focus on the things that I can influence and try and make the best decisions or the best calls on things that I can't, but try and let them go a little bit. If that sounds simple, but
no. Look, you know,
just round yourself with good people, even if it is on Zoom.
Look, ultimately, like, you know, you've absolutely got pressures that you would rather not, you know, you'd rather not have corona kicking around. Let's face it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, you're absolutely right. The need to focus on what you can focus on. And interestingly, right, this is something that I was thinking about on the plane on the way here, and the chat previous to this with Lindsay Lee Hobson. She articulated it really, really well. I think for a lot of people, what this is doing is it's obviously a realignment of values and what people value and whatnot. But also for a lot of people, a hell of a lot of people, it's actually making them think, what the hell, what is my purpose? Like, what are, you know, more so than the values, like, why am I me? Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? What, you know, what am I all about? And a hell of a lot of enforced self-reflection has come through in many aspects. And so for yourself to sort of articulate it in the way that you understand what really gives you great concern, and you've tackled that head on, is something that I think a lot of people can take heed of. It was something that you said very quickly, but at the same time, I think it's something that a lot of people need to do still. They need to understand what's driving them from a positive point of view and what drives them through fear. You know, and I think by understanding that, you get to have a much greater handle on the things that really matter to you and the things that are a pain in the arse, but ultimately there you can get round it, or you can get through it, or whatever. Okay, so then, you know, that's that, and I'm really glad that you sort of went there straight away, because that was really what I was hoping we could chat about, is what you talked about in a couple of your videos. Either, you know, you had that one video that was really moving in the middle of the bushfire crisis, and then the one that you did as it was starting to subside, in which you sort of said that, look, I've seen and felt what fear really feels like, and that has put a huge context around everything else that you've got and done and do and whatnot. Tell me, if it's okay, with the bushfires, because I know we talked about it being so last month or whatever, but so through fear of being unfashionable, tell me, how do you think? And I mean, I know you probably would still say something similar now with Corona, but how do you think your experiences through the bushfire season, how do you think it's defined how you roll when it comes to these sorts of things? I mean, how do you think you would have handled Corona post this? Would there have been any concern at all? Or would you have still been of that mindset because of how you've been working up to this point?
No, I think there's a couple of things. So we were having a chat off camera, but for everyone else who's watching, my dad is really sick. So I came into, he had a stroke about 2016, and a very big stroke. Came through that really well, but over the last couple of years has increased, is now in late stage dementia. And so when Dad first got sick, I'm the eldest of three daughters. Both my younger sisters were overseas at the time, and so I was, you know, the one that went and helped Mum. My parents live down the south coast, a little bit further from where we are right now, about an hour and a half down the road. And so Mum ended up being they both ended up being taken to Canberra and just stuff like that. That was the first time I think I'd really had to face that kind of stuff, like, you know, that kind of life and death and humanity and your father, you know, not being, the idea of him not being there anymore, and seeing your mum really vulnerable and all of those horrible things, and having to make some really hard decisions around that. And my dad and I are very, very close, so I knew what his views were on things. And, you know, we had times during that period where when he was, once he'd come through the worst of the stroke and was in rehab, he ended up being brought to Moruya Hospital, which is where our house is on the south coast. And he got a urinary tract infection and ended up crashing. And basically my mum couldn't get hold of me because of the tech issues that we have down here. And I didn't get there for about an hour. And when I walked in, the doctor didn't even introduce himself. He just said, "You are the named next of kin. You have power of enduring guardianship. Do you want us to, he's come through it, but do you want us, when this happens again, because it could happen again in the next 24 hours, do you want us to resuscitate?" And I was like,
wow.
"Oh, what? Hello, my name's Kylie Davis. You are?" Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And my mum sort of in a bit of a ball in the corner. And so having that, I mean, look, that was just awful. But the way I got through that was I had a project with CoreLogic at the time that I was working on, which was like a little passion project on the side. And CoreLogic kept saying to me, "Look, just leave that. Like, don't worry about it. Just go and look after your family and stuff." But like I was saying before, like when I use writing, and I use sitting down in front of a blank screen and writing stuff to calm me down, and because I can control the words on the page. And so I'm very conscious of the fact that I did. So I wrote The Future of Real Estate during that time, which was one of the first pieces of thought leadership I did at CoreLogic. And
which was
I
really
poured
good, by the way.
Yeah, well, wasn't bad.
No, it was pretty damn good, actually.
And I wrote it Jane Austen style, like on my laptop, sitting in, looking, watching Dad as he slept. I wrote it on a holiday on the Gold Coast that we took for a week just to get away from stuff for a bit. At sort of 4 a.m. for a couple of hours, just because I was awake and having a full-on anxiety attack, and I'd just write to calm down, and then I'd feel better. I'd go back to sleep, and I kind of dealt with it like that. So that was kind of the first thing, like that was kind of the most frightened in that space. And so I'm told, Sarah Bell, the very smart Sarah Bell, tells me that it's called cognitive dissonance when we do this. It's actually a thing, and it's basically I can't control that stuff, so I can control this, so I'm going to focus on this. Yeah. When the bushfires hit, just to sort of give a little bit of context to what happened, we're at Moruya, Mum and Dad are at Bega, hour and a half distance. My son was over from the UK. And he was here with his girlfriend and and I have 2 boys. Everybody had come down to our holiday house at Moruya for, a relaxing summer holiday, which we spent choking in smoke and bushfire app for most of it. And then the boys all went back to Sydney with my husband, but I wanted to have a couple of days with Mum and Dad, because I had sort of 3 nights that I was intending to stay with them before I went back to Sydney. And so I left on the 30th, and we all left on the 30th. And as I drove down through, it was just an hour and a half. I normally would stop at Cobargo for a quick coffee and just to grab, and a wee. And I didn't stop because it was so smoky that I actually got a bit frightened and thought, I don't know where the fire is. I haven't checked this far south, but it's too smoky, and I'm worried if I go out I won't be able to breathe properly. So I didn't stop for coffee, and instead I stopped on the roadside because I couldn't hang on any longer at a place called Kwama. And it literally just one of those loose stops on the side of the road. And I ran back to the car because the weather was horrible and the smoke was awful. And when I got to Mum's that night, pretty much at about 10 o'clock that night, we realised that pretty much the towns were gone. So that was like, holy shit. So that was in that stage. I thought, well, that was really frightening, and and that's probably my bushfire experience. I woke up the next morning, and Mum and I Mum had a carer organised for Dad. We were going to have a really lovely day playing ladies and having a facial together and all that sort of stuff. And Mum's carer, the carers basically rang and said, no, we can't come in. There's fires all around us. We need to be defending. And I said to Mum, look, I don't want to go in on my own. I think we need to stay together. So the three of us packed both cars, her car, my car, and we decided to go into Bega and to what. And that was the whole kind of shaking, needing to go to the loo a lot, all of that stuff. And the smell of the smoke was part of the fear response, because it made you feel, it was hard to breathe. It made you feel, like there was a physical response that was being encouraged by the environment that we were in. And so we went and had a couple of hours at the Bega shopping centre, because I thought, my logic to Mum was, look, maybe this will all be over in a couple of hours. They'll put the fire out. It'll never hit Bega. They'll put it out before it gets here. And the Stockland shopping centres is both air conditioned and has a full sprinkler system. So how bad could it be? But it was truly awful. And we were watching businesses, like all the smaller businesses, just shut down because everybody just wanted to get home, because they had kids in daycare that they would, and farm animals and stuff like that. And so we, at part of that, said, Mum said, and Dad started to get very agitated because it was getting very hard to breathe. And again, I got extraordinarily scared as part of that. And Mum said, look, I think we should go to the evacuation centre. Now, I know where Bega Showground is. It's located next to the Algas distribution.
Oh, okay.
We're not going there. Jesus Christ, if this thing comes through, we'll be blown high. And also, what do you do with a dementia patient in the bloody showgrounds? Oh, God alive. So some friends of Mum and Dad said, look, come to our place. He was a former fiery. Whole place was built out of concrete and steel, so and had roof sprinklers and no vegetation around it and all that sort of stuff. So we went there, and Deb and Mick Mundy, who are wonderful, wonderful people, literally we treated it like it was a visit. We sat on the couch and we had cups of tea and ate scones and had lunch together. And that was when I realised I couldn't keep being that scared anymore, because but driving from Bega, it's a 10-minute drive from Bega to back where we were at Callaroo at their point, and the sky was absolutely molten red. I put a photo of which I called Life on Mars of Mick and Deb's house at that time. And when we were in separate cars, Mum wanted me to go first. We had our headlights on. The smoke was extraordinary. The sky was absolutely red. We were only driving there because Mick had said, I've checked the weather app. I've checked the location. You can get here to our place. There's no fire coming. But the sky was so red, every fibre in your being was saying, this isn't safe. We can't. For me, my terror was that my parents in the car behind, I didn't actually know the way to Mick's house. Didn't tell my mother that. I was like, I had a vague idea where it was. It's like, oh, Jesus. So it's like screaming across the Gila Plains, trying to stay within the speed limit, stay reasonably calm, but just every bit of me thinking, no, this isn't good. And again, when we got to Deb's after everyone, we watched some very stupid Hallmark movie, romantic comedy, because we couldn't watch the news anymore. And again, I said to Mum and Deb's after about 2 hours of that, I said, look, I can't control this, but I've got a crap load of work I could do. So I'm going to open up my laptop and do that if that's okay. So that's what we did. And that's kind of, and look, there's that this is just pushing it to one side. I'll need to deal with this later. I'll process it later. And so that was when I started to write about what I was experiencing, because I figured that was the safest way to process it. And then we think, oh, well, that's, we got through that night, and we got to the next day. It took me sort of 2 hours to get petrol. And then we decided, Mum said, look, go home. They're evacuating the coast. And I have one of those, how we all have these terrible, silly fears that What's the worst? You know, if you ever said, "What's the worst thing that you could imagine happening to you?" My great fear is those American disaster movies when everyone's on the road and the aliens are attacking, or the volcanoes hitting, or the earthquake, whatever the bloody natural disaster is, and you can't get anywhere because you're stuck in a column of cars and RVs and stuff. That was what the entire South Coast was locked down, except the road up through Brown Mountain over the Monaro High Plains was the only road out. So people were coming all the way from Bateman's Bay because they couldn't get back to Canberra and coming, 2 hours south and then going up through. And so there was no petrol on the coast. There was no food. Like everyone was kind of hunkering down through that. And it took me 2 hours to get diesel, being like looking around trying to find diesel, and that was the second day, and we just watched the side of the road as just caravan after caravan after caravan after caravan just drove off. So I said to Mum, look, I'm not going today, this is stupid, I'll get up really early tomorrow morning and I'll jump on the road about 5 o'clock and I'll head home tomorrow. And at 5:30 in the morning, having packed the car and, kissed Mum and Dad and everything like that, I jumped into a column of cars and we went up through 5:30 in the morning, a column of cars in single file up the Brown Mountain, which is not a great road at the best of times. And everyone was very respectful and very sensible, but everyone was scared. You could tell that from the way everyone was driving. And we got halfway up the Brown Mountain and the smoke started to come in and you're like, fuck, where is it coming from? Because we are surrounded by trees and there is nowhere to go, if any. And you're just praying. And then I hit the Monaro High Plain. And I know that road really, really well. And for 4 hours, I had no idea where I was. And the smoke was so thick in spots. The only way you could see the car in front of you was their taillights, and the smoke was thick that it was rolling over your bonnet. I remember times where it was just like rolling over my bonnet in whirls, and I was thinking, wow. So the way I coped with that was I listened to a podcast. My dad wrote a porno because I figured it was the stupidest thing I could have. Amazing. And I still remember some of the things that I actually laughed at during what could I listen to that could take my mind off this, and that was it. But I didn't see open road or clear air until I hit the outskirts of Sydney, and that's a 7-hour drive.
Wow.
And through that kind of 3 or 4 day period, I kind of kept thinking, well, that's the most scared I'll ever be. And then the next day something would happen that would just ratchet it up and much again. And I'd be like, well, wow, that's the most scared I'll ever be. I'd be like, oh, shit. Anyway, so thank you to my dad wrote a porno to the crew.
Let's give him a credit where credit's due. For sure. It's just such an incredible. I mean, Nico and I were talking about this earlier. Like with Corona, you can when we were all told about social distancing and stuff. He said, "Look, it's not like we didn't take it seriously. We did everything that we were told to do, but at the same time, we were sort of having a bit of a joke about it and making light of it when we were doing auctions." And then he said, "It was only when I went to go get a coffee at my local coffee shop, which I always go to every day, and they said they had to lay off like 5 of their 7 staff. And then I had to go, and then by chance I needed to go to the mechanic afterwards, and he told me they'd laid off 8. And he said it was then that I went, whoa, shit, this is actually something that this is real. And that's what I was saying about the bushfires, because I've never been to any of these places that have been affected. I just haven't got round to getting to any of them. And
a great place for you to stay.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, that's exactly what I'll be doing. Look, I'll be on the way. I'll be on the way up there for sure. We'll come up.
We'll love it. We've got.
I bet. So and I was saying that about the bushfire. Like, I just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, my brother-in-law even was in Merimbula. And he sent me a picture from his dashboard, and it was like like orange, like he was on Mars or something, like what you said. And even then, I'm like looking at it, going, "Oh, that's not great." But but I'm not. like, but I'm not dealing with it. Like, you know.
Yeah. And I think when you're seeing photos of it, or when you're watching it in a movie or stuff like that, you're only seeing it through kind of 2 or 3 of your senses. So, you know, you're seeing it through your eyes, or you're hearing it on the radio, or you're hearing the commentary. But it's when you're in the look, nothing happened to us. We were fine. Like, you know, we spent the afternoon, you know, after a slightly scary drive across the Gila Plain, which wasn't, you know, under direct threat. We spent the afternoon eating sandwiches and drinking cups of tea with some really beautiful people. So, you know, look, you know, perspective. We didn't lose a property. We didn't, you know, we weren't at any physical risk at the time, except that when you see the photos of things like Malakuta or Eden or even, you know, Bateman's and round the back of Bateman's and Conjola and all those places, you only see the pictures and they look terrifying. It's when you're actually breathing the smoke and feeling the heat and you have, I mean, I'm having it now. You have a full physical reaction of,
Absolutely.
You know, and the people who have been through it, you know, because I remember even when we were at Bingy and writing a note to my tenants that I thought were going to come and stay with us to say, look, you know, go to the beach because you'll be safe at the beach. But the beach is in the national park, and what all of those guys at Malakuta and stuff, you know, you go to the beach and it's not like you can actually breathe at the beach because the smoke is extraordinarily thick and there's, you know, fire bombs raining down on you from the exploding gum trees and all of that. So it's a pretty awful thing to go through. And compared to that, which was a very real and present danger kind of threat, COVID, being asked to, you know, sit at my desk and talk to people online and sanitize my hands before and after I go shopping and reduce my dining out budget, which is what's happened. It doesn't seem like a very big thing to ask to do. Like, it seems a pretty straightforward, and as long as you can manage the panic around your finances and around who, you know, how you're going to keep body and soul together during this period, then you know, you just do what you've got to do because everybody's going to be going through the same thing.
And I think one thing I reckon, again, that everybody can take from this is you found yourself a nice, healthy outlet. You know, and you know, a lot of people, when it comes to dealing with you know, depression or anxiety or pressure of what's going on around them, a lot of people can turn to an easy solution like a vice or something like that. I think it'd be a really good idea if you do find yourself with a bit more time to dwell on things, to look at something that you can do that will allow you to outlet that pressure in a better way. So like Kylie does her writing and some of the stuff that you wrote about your experiences through that they were tremendously provoking and what have you. They really, really were. And I think a lot of people will find that if they found something creative, for want of a better word. I mean, look, because it doesn't necessarily need to be creative, but I think the people that are really tending to struggle right now are the ones that haven't got that creative mindset. They like order. They like stuff to be in the right place, doing the right thing. They're the ones that will enjoy the elements of control. And I think it's those people that might be thinking, well, geez, I'm not creative. Like, I mean, what can I do? Like, I don't have creative. I like accountants, not accountants, but people that are numbers driven or whatever. Right now, they're sort of feeling a lot more isolated because of the fact that they don't feel they've got that outlet. Well, what I'm saying is, I reckon if you gave it a crack, you probably will find something. Like, for example, Paul Zamalis, who's down in Victoria, he's taken to Lego and he's building like rally cars and all this sort of crap, you know, stuff like that, right? And so it's something that I think everyone would be wise to do, is just just try a bunch of different stuff from a creative point of view. If it's Lego, if it's painting, if it's writing, if it's something that your body can just do on autopilot almost, so to speak. It's a really good idea. Now, I wanted to ask you, so now with you being in tech, with you obviously being very tech focused for quite a long time, and understanding that the world, in a sense, has kind of played into your hands a little bit, with regards to with regards to technology and all that sort of stuff. Tell me, what are the things that you've noticed that have surprised you in terms of human behavior, society's behavior, the real estate industry's behavior, around how their reaction has been when it comes to, having to adopt some of these things that you've been talking about for quite some time?
So I think look, I'm really hey James, so my background is in media, and media got disrupted before real estate, and media got very violently disrupted because media thought it could control what was going on, and thought it could mitigate it, and thought that it could do evolution rather than revolution, and all of that sort of stuff, and you had that work for it, not so good. So and in fact, this is the death, like we're seeing newspapers closing now, and print editions stopping, and I doubt they'll ever come back, most of them. So but you can't make people change. People have to want to change from within. So even just going back to your comment, like if you're not a creative person, and creativity for creativity's sake, I think especially at times like this isn't really enough. Like the things that calmed me down when I was writing, when Dad was sick, I wrote the Future of Real Estate report, because I was able to not think about what I was thinking, but think about what people needed to know. And then when we were inside the Bega shopping centre and I was really losing it, but I knew that my mum was relying on me to not lose it in front of Dad, because that was an issue. I went outside and I thought, like, I'm a reporter by background, so I'm going to report, and that made me feel back in control. So it was about taking myself out of what I was feeling to put that feeling somewhere else, and to try and serve in another way. So if you're a really order or routine kind of person, then look for what you can do to serve your family, or to help other, so what can you do that, even if it's cleaning the linen closet that has never been cleaned for 20 years, or, refolding, going through your entire wardrobe, or do something that is, or cleaning your kids, like sorting the kids' Lego. Like when was that happened, but do something that, or do something for a neighbor, or do something, bake cakes, or or do something that is for somebody else. And I think the reason I'm sort of bringing that up now is that because in real estate, we have been resisting the change that the opportunities that technology has been offering us for a long time, because we thought it was actually about us. And we thought it was about our comfort with our processes and structures. And I use those words a little bit loosely. But we thought that for us to offer a personalised customer experience, the people had to be at the centre of all of the stuff that we did. But in fact, putting us at the centre of what we did is not as important as putting our customers at the center of what we do, and then looking at the structures and processes that we need to serve. And what COVID has done, in a way that, in a really hard, fast shock to the system, is that it's basically said, it has basically made us not be able to put our needs first. It's, how do we actually do an auction when you can't let people gather to auction? How do we do a routine property inspection on a property that we're managing if we can't go into the property? How do we trust our tenants? Like, how do we, so how do we actually put at a time when there are very few buyers out, few buyers out there, how do you actually pivot an industry that has only ever been motivated by caring for the seller, and has made its money from that? What can you do now to actually love up those buyers? Because the sellers are not going to get what they want unless those buyers are really being cared for differently. So it's really about stop putting our own objections and our own fear at what, you know, and so this to me is the whole kind of fear conversation. It's to stop thinking about our own fear and to actually start thinking about how can we serve, and then what do we need to put in place to serve better, and then we'll calm down.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I had a similar conversation with a director who has plenty of good things to say, and with the best intent, but for the love of her, she, for example, hasn't ever done a video of her commentating or providing some of this knowledge on wax, because it's her own insecurities, it's her own fear of being judged by.
Yes, God, happy.
But you know what I mean? Like, that's what I said to her. I said, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for the betterment of other people, and you need to take yourself out of the equation. And that's how I've dealt with auctioneering. That's exactly how I've dealt with pretty much anything, really. As soon as, and it is a case of, as soon as you can process it in your head to the point that what you are doing really has got nothing to do with you almost, then it becomes a lot easier just to move forward with things and to go into that sort of zone of action. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you corrected me there with the whole thing of creative for creative's sake. You're absolutely right. And if you are an order person, find something to put into order. You know, just go into your wheelhouse.
Or put something in order for someone else.
Yeah, go into your wheelhouse, see it, look at the core things that you know you can do almost on autopilot, and then lend those skills to other people, or you know, have a look at how you can apply them to your own health and well-being, your family and whatnot. I think that's a really, really good distinction to make. Yeah, you're right. You don't need to be creative, but you do need to be something, and you know what you are, you know what you're good at and whatnot. So just focus on what you can do. Absolutely. Yeah, lovely distinction. Now, in terms of moving forward, so ideal world, right? Dust settles on Corona, and let's stay with the real estate industry for the time being. If there were some, like, 2 or 3 things that you've seen change, either whether it's mentality or action or whatever the case may be, that you would hope would stay as an indelible mark, would stay as a permanent thing within the game, what would be the 2 or 3 things that you would ideally love to stay as permanent within the industry?
I would like to see permanent in the well, I think what we're going to see permanent in the industry is a change in mentality around from moving away from we can't to why not give it a crack. What's the worst could happen? Like, what, I mean, because as an industry, we have traditionally been very bad at change management. And we've been very bad at that because we always approach it. And look, it's not just real estate. Everyone does this. This is a human thing. But what we have done as an industry is we're feeling pain because of this thing that's going on now. So we want to move away from the pain. I mean, and this is a human condition. Like, I'm feeling sad or depressed. I want to move away from the depression. So let's crack up another bottle of red. Or, you know, so I want to move away from the pain. It's not that I want to move towards something better. And so, you know, in NLP theory and all these sort of things too, you see, well, look, imagine what amazing looks like. Imagine what a fantastic experience looks like that has got nothing to do with which recognizes that there's some pain right at the moment, but what is the best thing that could happen? And then how do we actually navigate from where we are now up to this best thing by pulling from the best thing away from the pain rather than trying to run away from the pain? Because when you run away from the pain, all that you try and do is you try and escape from it, or you try and smother it, or you try and you try and suppress it rather than move towards something that is good. So you need to kind of focus on the good thing. And so what I want to see the industry do better is start to visualize what that amazing experience could look like for sellers, that isn't based on our current limitations, but is just how can we use what we're experiencing right now so that in the next 2 years, 3 max, people who are selling a property think that was fantastic, like that was great. Let's do that again. Like, let's really pressure the government to reduce stamp duty so we can. That was such fun. Let's do it again. Or when I buy a property, actually, I have great things to talk about my real estate agent because they really helped me and I really, got great service and the settlement period was pain-free and all the things that I have been told by my parents were probably going to go wrong never happened because, look, it was just really transparent and I knew exactly where we were at every stage of it and didn't lose entire months of my life traipsing through properties because it was the only anything, didn't have to, didn't deal with all the stress with the kids' ballet and soccer and AFL and, grocery shopping and mowing the lawn and all the sort of stuff that you've got to do because, I was able to cull my list of things that I thought might be good and only go and see the 3 that were really good in person because I already checked out 20 online, having a coffee, sitting up in bed with my laptop on my knee with my husband next to me in bed. Like, why the way that we have always done real estate for the last 20 years isn't the only way that it can be done. What we want to keep from that, though, is that human connection. And what we want to be using the technology for is to make it easier to have a human connection that is meaningful, not a human connection because the humans are the people, fetching and carrying to fill the holes in the process.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm a firm believer that the more technology that you use with purpose, so don't just take stuff on for the sake of it being nice and new and shiny.
No.
The more time you are given to be more human, and that's the whole point of technology, right? It's to take away the time-consuming stuff that humans don't have to do or don't need to do. And I'm very much the same sort of mindset that if people understand that traditional and technology can live hand in hand, and by traditional, I'm talking that human connection piece, the thing that will always have us be relevant in some way, shape, or form. Use the tech to just eradicate anything that isn't a human connection action or a move or whatever the case may be. I think and I think I was talking to, I've got Dave Stewart coming on in a couple of days, I think. We both said this. It's just crazy to think because he's had some time in America, so have you. And their mentality is very much, let's give it a crack and see if it works, and if it does, wonderful. I think Australia and the Australian real estate landscape is really understanding that, look, I'm better off giving it a go. And if it goes wrong, then I'm not getting judged half as badly as I thought I was going to be, or at all. And I think that's something that can be quite liberating for a lot of people. There's so many people that you and I would speak to that are so restricted by fear of judgment and fear of reprisal. And I think what this enforced utilization of technology has done, it's allowed them to go, well, shit, trying stuff isn't actually that bad. Like, it's kind of like the first time you go down that really scary slide sort of thing at the water park. You go down it and you're like, oh, hold on, that was all right. And I think that, yeah, exactly. And I think that's where we need to really focus on. I think where the leaders of the industries, whether it's real estate or whatever, I think they need to, take that baton of, liberation that Corona has created with respect to judgment, reprisal, acceptance, all of those sorts of things, that put that straitjacket on a lot of people. I think if we as leaders can really push that through, it's something that will create a permanent change because of the endorphin rush, the relief of not getting judged, and then the bonus of it working. I think it's just, they're two things that can be incredibly powerful from a positive point of view if we encourage it more often. So absolutely brilliant, and I couldn't agree with you more. Look, I'm conscious that it's getting on towards 10 o'clock at night, and as Peter Brewer just mentioned, then he's worried that there's no vino or anything kicking around. So she says she has a look.
I may have one off
Oh, wicked. Look, before I let you go, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you would like to say and get out there that you think may be of some use to anybody that really is in that sort of either denial phase or real panic phase still when it comes to all the changes that have gone on?
Look, I had a really fabulous lecturer at uni who gave me some great advice when you're trying to work out who you are. Like, I think we panic the most when we're actually not being true to ourselves and we don't know who we are. And this works for everything. Like, he gave it to me as career advice, but actually it works when you're talking about choosing your life partner or anything. But he said to me, like, write down the list of, write down all the jobs that you had, and write down all the things that you loved about each of those jobs. Like, write down all the things that you thought was fantastic about every single role that you've had. And then write down a list of all the things that you hated about your job. And then write a third list, which is the opposite of everything you hated. So you end up with pretty much 2 lists of what you like and 1 list of what you don't like. And he said probably what you do is you'll find, as you do this exercise, you'll find that the opposite of what you hated was on the list of everything you wanted. But then what you do is you go into the list of what you want and focus on what you want. And that was amazing advice for me when I left News and went to CoreLogic, and it was amazing advice that I had been thinking about a lot when I ended up leaving CoreLogic and went out on my own, because I knew what I wanted. I mean, and even when I left News, I had done that exercise. So I knew, I didn't necessarily know what the job description was. I didn't know, I wasn't locked down in the packaging of it. I just knew what was true to me because I knew what I wanted and I knew what I didn't want. And so when I'm feeling extraordinarily afraid, as I have had reason to feel quite a lot recently, I'm able to think about, well, what do I like? What don't I like about this? And so what's the opposite of what I don't like? And then try and focus on, well, where can I see what I like in the situation that I actually find myself in? And that's kind of been my little 3 a.m. coping mechanism.
Amazing. And
we all wake up at 3 a.m.
And that's how I came up with this. I think it was about 2:30 in the morning that I came up with doing this bloody show. It's such an amazing little exercise, and that's it, right? So many people think that these sorts of things, these little tips and ideas and exercises and whatnot, there'll be a hell of a lot of people that will just brush it off and be like, that's just hippie nonsense, or the majority of people that MBA
right there.
This is exactly it, right? So you guys that are still struggling, you're still struggling to get beyond what's going on and what have you, and really struggling to cope with the enforced changes. What have you got to lose? Give something like this a go. Kylie is where she's at in terms of her career and the level of respect and admiration that her industry has for her. It's not by chance, it's not by luck, it's by doing things and understanding who she is and doing things that allow her to get back to who she is. And that is a brilliant little exercise that can absolutely help you to do just that. Kylie, thank you so much. I always enjoy spending time with you. You're an absolute star, and I'm very, very grateful that you've taken some time to spend it with myself. What are you doing? You spilling food on yourself or something?
No. The midgies are attacking me. It's all right. I just got one down.
Bless.
Not even a thing.
Look, I'll let you crack on. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And guys, if you want, how can people reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Look, I'm everywhere. Just Google me. But in seriousness, Kylie at realcontent.guru.
All right. Look, the Peter Brewer there. She's a smart shuck. She certainly is a smart chuck. So tell me that email address again, and I'll just pop it up on the screen.
Kylie@realcontent.guru. Because .biz was taken. Well, that's much more fun.
Fair enough, guys. I'm just popping up. If you want to get hold of Kylie, that's the way to do it. Kylie@realcontent.guru. But for now, Kylie, I will let you go and enjoy what's left of your evening. Thank you so much, and no doubt we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for a nice show. See ya.
Take care.
Bye.